of Brian McKnight's son, Niko. Niko McKnight died at the age of 32 after battling stage 4 colon cancer. He was a singer, a guitarist.
Y'all, I don't even know where to start with this one because what I'm about to tell you is so heartbreaking and so absolutely cold that it's going to shake you to your core. Brian McKnight, the man who sang about love, about family, about being there for the people who matter most, rejected his dying son, Niko McKnight. And I'm talking about rejected him while the young man was literally fighting for his life with cancer. SMH Che, rest in peace, Niko, because your father sure didn't show up for you when you needed him most. And the question everyone's asking is, why is Brian so cold to his kids? Because, honey, this story goes deeper than just one tragic moment. This is about a pattern of abandonment that's been building for years. Let me paint you the picture of what actually happened here. Because when I tell you this story is going to make your blood boil, I mean every single word. 25-year-old Niko McKnight, Brian's own flesh and blood, spent 2 years battling cancer. 2 years of hospital visits, chemotherapy, radiation, pain that most of us can't even imagine.
A guitarist, a photographer. Years ago, I did an event with Brian McKnight and his 2 older sons at a Macy's in Center City. It was a holiday show, and they were going around to different cities performing together.
And through all of that suffering, through every single doctor's appointment, every sleepless night, every moment when this young man needed his father most, Brian McKnight was nowhere to be found. According to page 6, Brian never called, never visited, never even sent a text message. Can you imagine that? Your own father, the man who helped bring you into this world, just disappearing when you're fighting for your life. It's not like Brian didn't know what was happening. This wasn't some secret illness. The family was aware. Social media was talking about it. But Brian McKnight, radio silence, complete and total abandonment. And this isn't just about one tragic situation, because what we're looking at here is a man who has systematically cut off all 4 of his biological children. We're talking about Brian Jr., Niko, Clyde, and his daughters Brianna, and another daughter whose name he's basically erased from his public narrative. 4 human beings that he helped create, and he's treating them like they don't exist. But here's where it gets absolutely wild. Brian isn't just quietly distancing himself from these kids.
During the final years of Niko's life, he was very estranged from his dad. Brian McKnight has been very estranged from all 4 of his older children.
He's actively attacking them on social media. This man has called his own children products of evil families. Evil families. Can you believe that? He's out here on Instagram and Twitter talking about how he chooses joy by cutting off negativity. And that negativity he's referring to, his own kids. Meanwhile, and this is what makes it so much worse, he's parroting around his second wife Leilani's children like they're the only family that matters. He's calling her stepdaughter Julia and stepson Jack his real children. He even had the audacity to rename Jack as the real Brian McKnight Jr., basically erasing his actual son Brian Jr. from his legacy. And don't even get me started on how he's calling their new baby Brian Kiko Amato his true legacy. The disrespect is just, it's astronomical. Picture this scene for a moment, because this is where my heart completely breaks. Niko McKnight, weak, sick, probably scared out of his mind, is lying in a hospital bed knowing his days are numbered. And what does he do?
He married, started a new family, claimed the new wife's kids, and just act like the others didn't exist, and referred to them in an interview as a product of sin.
He gets on Twitter and makes what might be the most heartbreaking public plea any child has ever made to their parent. He tweeted that his dying wish was simply to hear his father say, "I love you." That's all he wanted. Not money, not a grand gesture, not some huge reconciliation. Just 3 words. "I love you." From the man who's supposed to love him unconditionally. And you know what Brian McKnight's response was? Are you ready for this? He allegedly told his dying son that he couldn't say,
"I love you,"
arbitrarily. Like loving your child is some kind of business transaction that has to meet certain conditions. Like a 25-year-old fighting cancer isn't deserving of basic parental affection unless he jumps through the right hoops. The level of cruelty in that response. I can't even wrap my head around it. This is a man who's built a career singing love songs, talking about devotion, about being there for people. But when his own son, literally dying, asks for the most basic expression of love, Brian calls it arbitrary. But wait, it gets even more disturbing because Niko didn't just ask for his father's love and get rejected. He actually started questioning whether his own suffering was somehow connected to his father's karma. Can you imagine being so sick, so close to death, and wondering if your father's coldness somehow brought this disease into your life?
They're saying that in the final months and weeks of Niko's life, Brian McKnight didn't even bother to reach out. What could have happened that you just want to abandon?
The psychological damage that kind of rejection causes, it's just devastating. And where was Brian during all of this drama? Was he quietly dealing with family issues behind the scenes? Was he struggling with his own emotions about his son's illness? No. He was on social media posting happy family photos with Leilani and her kids. He was celebrating his new baby. He was literally acting like his dying son didn't exist while promoting his new and improved family. What do you think about that? Because honestly, I need to hear from y'all in the comments. Have you ever seen a parent be this cold to their own child? Have you experienced this kind of family rejection yourself? Drop a comment and let me know your thoughts because this story is hitting me in ways I didn't expect. Now, let's talk about the money. Because you know there's always a money angle in these family drama situations. Brian has been very vocal about claiming that his older children had financial expectations that pushed him away. He's painted this narrative like they were just gold diggers trying to use him for his success. But here's the thing, even if that were true, which we have no way of verifying, how does that justify abandoning a sick child?
Your children from an early relationship. Was the breakup that bad with your wife? Because he has 2 other kids with 2 other women. What has happened that you would just cut them off like they don't exist?
How does financial disagreement turn into complete emotional abandonment? These are questions Brian has never adequately answered. And frankly, there might not be an answer that makes any of this okay. And speaking of money, let's dive into the situation with his daughter, Brianna, because this is where Brian's character really shows its true colors. In 2020, Brianna actually had to SUE her own father for defamation. Why? Because Brian had implied publicly that she'd had an incestuous relationship. Let that sink in. A father publicly suggesting something so disgusting and damaging about his own daughter that she had to take legal action. The case ended with Brian paying $318,000 to settle, though he made sure to include no admission of wrongdoing in that settlement. But here's what's really telling. The very next day after that settlement, Brian rewrote his will. He literally waited until the ink was dry on that legal document and then made sure his biological children were completely cut out of his inheritance.
His career, it's probably suffering now, and he's probably sitting around saying, I don't know what happened. But what could have happened to lead to this?
And then he had the nerve to go on social media defending his decision to name his new baby Brian Kiko Amato, essentially replacing his older son Brian Jr. not just emotionally, but legally and financially too. The symbolism is just brutal. It's like he's systematically erasing his first family and replacing them with a better version. But you know what the most tragic part of this whole story is? Niko didn't die alone and unloved. Despite his father's complete abandonment, he was surrounded by family members who actually cared about him. His uncle Claude McKnight, who's a member of the gospel group Take 6, posted the most beautiful tribute after Niko passed away. Claude talked about Niko's musical talent, his gentle spirit, his potential that was cut short by this terrible disease. He painted a picture of a young man who deserved so much better than what his father gave him. And reading that tribute, knowing that Niko had people who loved him and saw his worth, it's both comforting and heartbreaking at the same time, because it proves that this wasn't about Niko being unlovable or problematic. This was about Brian McKnight making a conscious choice to prioritize his new family over his existing children. And that choice, It cost him the opportunity to be there for his son's final moments. It cost him the chance to say goodbye. It cost him the possibility of redemption. You should have seen the social media reaction when news of Niko's death broke, because people were furious. Impressive, one of the biggest commentary channels on YouTube, called Brian's behavior cold-hearted and narcissistic. And honestly, that feels like an understatement.
Not a good look. He really turned a lot of people off when he referred to his children as product of sin. Sir, you were married. Are you talking about the kid number 3 and 4 with the other 2 women that you didn't marry? It's a mess.
People were sharing screenshots of Brian's recent posts, happy family photos with Leilani, and the kids' celebration posts about his new baby, inspirational quotes about choosing positivity. All of this while his biological son was dying. The optics are they're horrific. And what's really getting to people is the pattern. This isn't just about one estranged relationship. Brian has systematically cut off 4 of his children. 4. That's not a coincidence. That's not just bad kids or financial expectations. That's a man who has decided that his original family is disposable. But here's what I keep thinking about, and maybe this is the karma that Niko was talking about in his tweets. Brian McKnight is treating his current stepchildren and new baby like they're permanent fixtures in his life. But what happens when they get older? What happens when they start having their own opinions, their own financial needs, their own complicated feelings about their stepdad? History has a way of repeating itself, especially when someone refuses to acknowledge their patterns. The same coldness that Brian is showing his biological children, what's to stop that from eventually extending to his current family? Kids grow up, they become independent. They sometimes disappoint their parents. And if Brian's track record is any indication, unconditional love isn't exactly his strong suit. Let me tell you something about family dynamics, because I've seen this story play out before. Men who abandon their first families often convince themselves that their new families are different, special, more deserving. They create elaborate justifications for why their first children failed, then while their new children are perfect.